I am joined now by another Hall of Famer, Bob Costas, who is in our studio at the MLB Network studios today. And Bob, certainly a man that you have a tremendous amount of respect for.
Sure.
We all do. Just your thoughts about the passing of the late, great legend, Vin Scully.
You know, there are so many thoughts, and I've been on the MLB Network and other places since the news of his passing came late last night, and I don't want to repeat myself. So I'm trying to think of something that we haven't mentioned yet. And as you know, Alanna, he was a man of great faith. He truly believed, till he drew his last breath, that somewhere in the beyond he'd be reunited with those he loved, and those in his baseball family and in his actual family who had preceded him in death. Vin's life was not without tragedy. His first wife, Joan, died unexpectedly and very young. He had a son named Michael who, as an adult, died in a helicopter crash in the 1990s. And his beloved second wife, Sandy, preceded him in death. She had ALS and died in her 70s. So he was a bit older than she was, and he remarked to me, and I'm sure to others, you know, it wasn't supposed to be this way as her health was failing. She was supposed to be taking care of me at this point, not me taking care of her. And he didn't mean that as a complaint. It was poignant when he said it because he loved her so much. And maybe this is not the path you expected me to go down, but again, you know, I've said everything I can possibly say about his mastery of the craft and about the longevity and the connection first to the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Jackie Robinson Boys of Summer Dodgers, and then in Los Angeles, the differences between how baseball was received then, mostly on radio, as opposed to on television, and how baseball was the unquestioned national pastime. So it was in the imagination of more Americans than, sadly, it is today. And World Series games got ratings where you never worried about whether a football game would beat it. A World Series game would dwarf any football game. That's the prime of Vin's career. And we could talk for hours about the detail that he brought to everything and the magnificent powers of observation and the lyrical phrasing and all the rest. But I've been down that road a few times. So forgive me if I go in this direction, because at least it's a story that most people haven't heard. When Vin
And it's a good one, Bob.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Alanna.
No, it's a good one. You bring up his love of family and his faith. And he stepped down with the Los Angeles Dodgers after the 2016 season because his wife Sandy was in failing health. And certainly behind every good man is a strong woman. And Sandy was that for Vin. And some say, you know, he passed because of old age, but also because of a broken heart. And that connection that the two of them had was absolutely incredible.
Well,
and I think more than anything, you could see the outpouring of love and support across the globe for Vin. He was universally beloved.
Yeah, and that was where I was going with Sandy. When Vin received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in November of 2016, he was kind enough to invite me and my wife Jill to be there for the ceremony. And it was Barack Obama's last Presidential Medal of Freedom ceremony, and there's Vin with the president. And they really emptied the bucket. I'm going to forget some names, but Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Robert Redford, Tom Hanks, Robert De Niro, Bill and Melinda Gates, Ellen DeGeneres, Diana Ross, and I'm leaving some people out. And Vin was among them. Okay, the ceremony is over, and we're in some other room, I forget what it is, adjacent to the East Room. And Vin went out into the Rose Garden to be interviewed for the CBS Sunday morning program. Meanwhile, the Marine Corps band is playing a variety of standard songs. And when Vin Scully walked back out of the Rose Garden and back into the White House, the conductor of the Marine Corps band spots him, and immediately he cues the band to play Take Me Out to the Ball Game. But then he hands Vin the baton, and Vin steps up on the podium, and he's, at least figuratively, conducting the Marine Corps band. And I look over at Sandy, and someday, Alanna, I'll share this picture with you because Jill recorded it on her phone. The look on her face, now I'm getting emotional, just a pure love and connection was so touching. I can't believe I'm choking up. You're not supposed to do that.
No.
Be professional, Bob.
It's okay. It's okay. When it comes to Vin Scully, you have every right to do that because I know you guys are very close. And again, Just an amazing moment, and thank you for sharing that story, because I had never heard that before. And it doesn't surprise me that even the conductor of the Marine Corps band would be enamored with Vin Scully and want to just have a piece of him, which leads me to my next point, Bob, and you know this better than anybody. We are all in mourning of losing somebody that we considered to be a family member, a grandfather to many, a father to many. I mean, this is a man that has spanned generations from our grandparents to our grandchildren. And we're selfish in that. I wanted Vin to live forever. And I guess at 94, you can't expect him to do that. But imagine how many people are feeling like they've lost one of their own.
Yes, you know, he worked alone, famously worked alone, except on network television, where he had a great pairing with Joe Garagiola on NBC. But somehow, he made it sound as if, even if the audience included millions, he made it sound as if he was talking to you individually. In fact, sometimes he would even say, did I ever tell you the story about Duke Snider or whatever? Did I ever tell you? Or, you know, you and I have been friends for a long time. That you included everybody. You know, one of his phrases that he sometimes went to, when a guy tried for an extra base, let's say, and it was a foolish adventure and he's out by a mile, he's out from me to you. You know, that was a way of drawing the audience in. The little things, pull up a chair. You know, it's just the start of things. He's going to tell you a story, the story of that game, the story of that season, the story of all the baseball seasons that he had personally observed. Toward the second half of his career, maybe even sooner than that, because he'd been around so long and associated with so many big moments, his broadcasts were simultaneously present and nostalgic. They were news bulletins of that game and that moment, but they were flashbacks to every game you ever remembered or every moment you ever heard him call. That's a kind of relationship. You know, Jack Buck had it in St. Louis. Other great announcers had that relationship with local audiences. But when you combine that with all the other qualities and the circumstances of Vin's career, that's why he stands alone. If there was a Mount Rushmore and you had to confine it to 4 announcers, you could find 3 other great ones. But maybe Vin's would be elevated just a little bit higher than the other 3.
I think you're on that Mount Rushmore as well. Let me ask you this question, Bob, because I think about this more than anything. Often fans, of course, identify with broadcasters. They feel as if they are bringing us into their own homes. What, in my opinion, made Vin rise above everybody else is the players cared about him too.
Yes.
The players were desperately wanting Vin Scully to call their name in their major league debut or announce their children's birth. I mean, he transcended not only the fan base, but the players in which he covered as well.
And, you know, a great many players are from California, so they may have grown up listening to Vin Scully through the years. And I've heard this story many times, so Vin must have heard it a zillion times, where someone would say, my greatest thrill was my mom or dad getting to hear Vin Scully mention my name. And just this morning, I got a text from our own Kevin Millar, and he had saved, on a voicemail or something, he had saved Vin's call of a home run he hit. And here's the reason. His dad had spent, according to Vin, some $3,000 on tickets for friends and neighbors to see Kevin Millar play his first game at Dodger Stadium, or at least that game if it wasn't his first. And Chan-Ho Park was pitching, and Vin had noted that Kevin had 6 hits off Chan-Ho Park, but 4 of them were home runs. So he's going through this whole thing. So he spent $3,000, and there are plenty of Kevin Millar fans here tonight. And wouldn't you know it, as Vin himself would say, wouldn't you know it, he then hits a home run. And so that $3,000 was a very worthwhile investment for Mr. Millar. So, you know, Kevin Millar will keep that along with every trophy and every clipping about his career. That will rank as high, maybe higher than any of them, because it's Vin Scully talking about him. And importantly, because this is part of what baseball is, he's talking about him and his dad.
Yeah. And that's the connection to so many when it comes to Vin Scully. He was the soundtrack of having a barbecue with your father or your mother in the backyard. Another thing that stands out to me, Bob, about Vin is the fact that he was able to, if a fan was at the game and watching the game, they still brought the transistor radio to listen to Vin. That wasn't necessary. They could see what was unfolding, but they didn't feel that they were getting the complete picture unless Vinny was in their ear.
I think the best example of that is Sandy Koufax's perfect game in 1965. We hear the Hank Aaron home run, and all of these were handled magnificently by Vin. The ball going through Buckner's legs, Kirk Gibson's home run. But if you want to get what, for me, is the epitome of his mastery, it's the radio call in 1965 of Koufax's perfect game. And it isn't just strike three to Harvey Keene. Any good announcer could have called that and called it well. It's the framing of it. It's all the little grace notes and observations and little details. It's like he's painting a picture with broad strokes and little accents. And he steps back from the canvas, and it's all right there. If you had a month to improve on a transcript of what he said that night extemporaneously, in the moment, you couldn't change a comma. Now, anybody that was at the ballpark, and there was something like, I don't know how many there were, 29,000, and he said something like, 29,000 people here and about 1 million butterflies. That's perfect. How would you ever improve upon that? But if you had a transistor radio, then you would have enjoyed that experience, and it would have been more meaningful for you all the more if you had a transistor radio while you were watching Sandy Koufax. And just as a little footnote to that, this started, it would have happened anyway just because of Vin's mastery, but it really started in the late 1950s when the Dodgers played in the Coliseum in Los Angeles before Dodger Stadium opened in 1962, because the Coliseum was so weirdly configured for baseball that many of the seats actually faced away from home plate and away from the diamond. The game was like a rumor in some of those seats. So even if it hadn't been Vin Scully, many people would have brought a transistor radio. But then when it turned out to be Vin, even if they had box seats, they still wanted the transistor to hear Vin.
Bob, I want you to leave us with your final thought on this. One thing that Vin did so well was saying a lot by saying nothing at all. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he knew that on television especially, your job is to put a caption beneath a picture, whereas on radio, you paint the entire picture. But be it radio or television, when a big moment happened, he always called that moment as quickly and as concisely and as accurately as he could, and then he stepped back and let the roar of the crowd and all the tumult play out before he added some sort of little grace note at the end. After all the craziness of the 10th inning in '86 in Game 6 and the ball goes through Buckner's legs and all the celebration is happening at Shea Stadium, then it's, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, you've seen about 1 million words. Or after Kirk Gibson, you know, sometimes when we see these edited highlights, they pull up the audio. He didn't say, in a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened, as Gibson was rounding the bases, he waited for a while. And that became kind of the postscript to it. The call of Hank Aaron's home run is very good, the home run itself. But so is Milo Hamilton's call, very good. What separates Vin's call is what he says at the end, and how he brings in the undeniable social significance of what was unfolding, along with the baseball significance. That was just something that Vin did continually that separated him even from others who were truly great.
A black man receiving a standing ovation in the Deep South. Bob Costas, Hall of Famer, weighing in on the legend, the life, and the legacy of Vin Scully. Thank you so much for the insight, Bob.
Thank you, Alanna.